Welcome to More in the Word, a podcast of Moore Theological College in Sydney, Australia, that seeks to glorify God through biblically sound, thought-provoking and challenging talks and interviews. In this episode, from an interview conducted by Ed Loane earlier this year, Peter and Christine Jensen share the story of how they came to know Jesus, how they came to know each other, and how they served together in ministry over the years, while Peter was principal at Moore College, while he was Archbishop of Sydney, and beyond. We hope you find the episode helpful.
We're here today with Peter and Christine Jensen, a ministry couple who have really had a huge influence on the Sydney diocese and beyond over the last half century or more. And we're talking today about their involvement at Moore College and other places where the involvement's been for really over 60 years now. But before we get to how you came to be at Moore College, tell me a little bit about how you two met. What's your story?
How we met? Christine, I don't remember.
No, you don't remember that far back. We went to Sunday school together.
Wonderful.
So I was about 7, I suppose, and Peter was there because his family lived close by, and I lived at Bondi, and my dad wanted to send me to church. He was a Methodist, but the Methodists met on Sunday afternoons, and he wanted to go to the beach then, and we didn't have a car, so he took me in the tram up to Bellevue Hill because he knew the minister from the war. They'd been on the same ship. And he sat in the park and I went to Sunday school.
Wow.
And met this dazzling boy.
No. I didn't know he existed for a long time. But I went to school with Robert Tong.
Rightio. You two then grew up in church together, Sunday school, and then was there a youth group in the church?
Absolutely formative for us. In fact, we still have quarterly meetings, the youth group. Yes,
Is it still called youth group?
Well, some people do. It gave us a group of friends, of Christian friends, that have stayed with us all our lives and had a big influence on us. For example, we went to Sunday school, and in those days we used to have Sunday school exams, yes, and the Archbishop used to hand out certificates, yes, if you did well enough. And then you'd have Bible class, and then you'd have
teacher training. And we had a special class. It was just wonderful because we were taken through the principles of education. And I was 15 when I did this. And then we used to go around and observe people teaching. Peter still has the notes from when he observed different classes. They wouldn't want to see the notes. And then we did prac teaching. Yeah. And then we got a class.
And who taught you the teacher training and was your youth group leaders?
It was a man called Ken Newton, who was later moved to Camden, that area. But he wasn't in the youth group so much.
No, he must have been 10 years older than us. But he was a brilliant teacher, absolutely brilliant teacher, and he used some American stuff. And I always say that the things I learnt in that class I use every day of my life.
Wonderful.
It was so formative.
That's fantastic. And what about personally how you met Jesus? Tell us how that happened for each of you.
Well, Mrs. Netcher.
Well, at Sunday school, I remember my Sunday school teachers and learning the Bible verses. Miss Page and Mrs. Netcher particularly, and Peter Simpson were my teachers. But it wasn't till I went to the Billy Graham Crusade, which our youth group did. We just walked down to the showground, and I heard Billy Graham say, you needed to make a declaration of your faith in Jesus. Nobody had ever asked me to do that before. So I went forward at the crusade, which was saying my committee, realising that Jesus was my Lord and Saviour.
Wonderful.
And 50 years later, she got a letter from a young lady who'd been in the same group and who had been converted because she'd seen Christine walk forward.
Wow.
So isn't that terrific?
50 years.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So that was April 1959, and it must have been that day, I imagine, that I too went forward at the Billy Graham Crusade. It was more decisive in a sense for me. I'd become aware in 2 or 3 years of how you could be enslaved to sin and unable to break this by being a goodie.
Yes.
And then suddenly Mr. Graham told us the gospel in this powerful way, and people were praying everywhere.
Yeah.
And we became Christians that day.
Wonderful. And was that something, if you like, that you did together, or it was almost, you were in the same youth group, but you were in parallel paths?
Yeah.
So you had your mates and you had your friends.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how did you two then, how did the romance blossom?
Come on, Pete. This is your answer.
Well, I see. Well, it was not till our 20s. And Christine, by that stage, had graduated as a teacher, primary school teacher, and was teaching down in the Wollongong area in Berkeley and then in Ferry Meadow. And I, by that stage, had failed university a couple of times and had begun teaching at Scots College Prep. They must have been difficult to find teachers in those days.
Commendation for the school there.
He was an old boy.
Oh, well, it doesn't matter if you fail university then.
I was a very good teacher, Ed.
I believe
Laurie
it.
Scandrett, who you may know, was in my class, and he went on and got a PhD at Cambridge. So I think it was all right.
They're the best.
Anyhow, where does it may,
In that,
we started going out.
Excellent. And so you both made a personal commitment to Jesus and you started going out and the relationship developed. You got married. When you thought about going into ministry, was that something you did as a couple, or was that you were going to do that from an earlier age and Christine joined on?
You think you're becoming a missionary, weren't you?
yes, we were going out, but we hadn't talked about marriage at all. I went to a summer school where John Stott was speaking, and I thought I could be a teacher in Tanzania. So when I came back to Sydney, I applied to CMS. Peter was already in college, actually. He'd gone the year before, but I thought, well, I'll apply to CMS, and I was accepted. I was a CMS candidate, and then I enrolled in Deaconess House, which is what you did.
Yep.
So that's how we came to be here together.
Uh-huh.
And it was during that time, 67, really, Peter asked me to marry him.
Uh-huh.
And then I had a thing of conscience, what was I going to do? And I remember talking to Don Cameron, who'd been our minister at Bellevue Hill at one point, and I said to him, I'm not sure what I should do. And he said, sometimes we think God always wants us to do the hard things in life and make the hard choices, but that's not always so. So I decided I could accept the proposal.
You took the hard choice.
Yeah,
It would
I
be
reckon.
much easier being a missionary in Africa.
I think so, Ed.
Well done, well done. So you both arrived at college unmarried then?
As did most people in those days.
Yep.
Very few people were married when they first came to college
Yep.
in those days. College was much smaller. I think there are between 80 to 100 people here, though there was Deaconess House as well, and that was fairly well populated, wasn't it,
was
as well?
mostly full of
Wonderful.
people doing the theology or the course, a few university students, but not many.
Yep.
Yeah. We would sit in the same class, so we'd be in the same class together. And the Deaconess students would wear a uniform, and the men would wear a academic gown.
Well,
Those are the days.
dignified times.
Those are the days.
If I go back a little bit, how did you end up at Moore College, Peter? Was it a CMS conference? And what was your intention?
No. After I had gone forward to the Billy Graham Crusade, much to the consternation of my parents, I went back 17 times to hear him after that initial time.
To make sure.
And one of the things he said one night was, we need more people to go into the ministry. That stuck in my mind. I found law absolutely, I left school at 17. I wasn't going to go to Moore College, but I found law absolutely interminably boring and so failed. But I went and saw a doctor because I kept falling asleep in lectures. He said, well, what do you really want to do? And I said, I want to go into the ministry. It just came out. And he said, well, do that instead. Thank you. Next patient.
Wow.
And it was true. That is indeed what I wanted to do. So then it was 3 years teaching at Scots.
Yep.
And then 1966, I turned up.
And with the intention of being a parish minister
Yes.
in Sydney Diocese as
Absolutely, yes.
an ordinand in
Tanzania did not appeal at all,
Okay.
but the intention was to be a parish minister in the Diocese of Sydney. Yeah.
Wonderful. So you were living in what's now called Chapo House.
Yes.
And you were living in what
used
became
to be called Deaconess House.
Deaconess House, yep.
Mary Andrews.
That's right. The lecturers, was there 20? I think there's 20 now. Or was it a handful? Were there highlights?
Much smaller college,
Yep.
maybe 100 in all. I don't really know, but I think something like that, including the women from Deaconess House. And so the faculty, my memory is the faculty would be about 8 people,
Yep.
full-time, and then there were part-timers as well. I can remember them all. Same message, very different personalities. And their impact was considerable. The whole idea was fellowship, really. And they ate with us and we knew them and all this sort of thing. They tended to live here. They had houses which they were living in here. And I can virtually remember all of them, I think, with some special smile on my part.
Were there any in particular that resonated as somebody through your years studying where you had an aha moment or something like that?
Well, the ones that had the biggest impact on me were undoubtedly Broughton Knox with his Socratic method. He loved question answers.
You couldn't take notes. It was impossible.
He thought you did, but in fact, there was no point in taking notes. And so the aha moment was, as with the best teaching, in my opinion, it wasn't a full lecture. You can read a book and get that. Yeah. It was the moment at which, I see the point now. Yes. And it may be a fellow student who says something which enables you to see it, because learning is a corporate activity. So Broughton was like that, brilliant, very knowledgeable, many things I could say about DBK, but as a teacher, I think he kept bringing you back to the Bible. Well, what does the Bible say? What does the Bible say? Donald Robinson, different personality, different style, but again, immensely influential. I went through a period of doubt when I was in second year. See, one of the things about the college was then, and I presume is still, we were not frightened to hear about what the other points of view. The library contained all the books. Lecturers told us about other points of view. But I think one of the things that have helped me there was Donald Robinson's sheer non-panic. He was calm. There are answers to these things. He was wonderful, but he had many other gifts as well. I think Graham Goldsworthy had a big influence.
Yeah, I remember when you were in first year, you talked about Old Testament. Yeah. And because our sermons were basically a different text every week, to suddenly see the cohesiveness of the Old Testament and to see it was actually a story. It was huge. Yeah. I think we take it for granted now. Yes. But for me and Peter, I remember you gave me to read that book by
John Bright, I think.
Yes, John Bright. Yes. And I mean,
Kingdom. It was about the kingdom.
The kingdom, yeah, and the impact of biblical theology as well.
Yeah,
just sort of shone the light into. God was shining the light into our hearts.
It was wonderful, and we have no time, but we could talk about Alan Cole and Noel Pollard and Bruce Smith. Yep. Dudley, I've mentioned. No, I've left someone out. Oh, Bill Dumbrell, of course. Yep. And I hope I haven't left too many people out. It was an extraordinary group. Yeah. Of teachers.
So you'd lived in Wollongong, I presume, teaching. Was this your first time out of home, living here?
No, I lived at Scots College.
Oh, you lived in the school. I was going to ask a question about the community and your fellow students. And one of the things that I think in 2026 is unique about Moore is that people still live here and eat together and things like that, and that there's a cohort that you travel through with. What was that like for you? A new experience or a special thing during your time at Moore?
Well, when I came to Deaconess House, we all lived in. We enrolled in Deaconess House and we had all our meals down there, and we had lectures with the men, and we had our own chapel twice a day, and we had cleaning duties, Don't laugh, Ed. We had to be on duty at 7 o'clock, and then breakfast was at 8, and then there was chapel after breakfast. And everybody had duties, bathroom, vacuuming, all that sort of thing. That's what was required. But people I met there, I'm particularly close to a couple of women that were there. So I roomed across from Narelle Jarrett when we were in second year. We were in college together. We became quite good friends at that point. And Wendy Cahoon was a dear friend. Yeah.
And at the last summer school, we decided we'd reached the age when we could no longer go and share a house together. So a number of the members of the year I was in met to follow the live stream of summer school.
Very good.
And we are still meeting.
That's great.
And I mentioned my intellectual doubts in second year. One of the things I mentioned, Donald Robinson was very helpful. He didn't know he was being helpful, but he really was. The other thing was people like my friend Jim Ramsey and others who were just friends and supporters, and we had fellowship together. That was also very impactful, and it remains so. These are people we have stayed in touch with, many of them, not all of them, but we've stayed in touch with them all our lives.
Yeah, wonderful.
It is wonderful.
And did you have cleaning duties at 7 a.m.?
Certainly not.
But you had other things like gardening. The guys had gardening, library duty, various things in the dining room as well, things like that. You don't remember.
I must have tried to get out of them, Christine.
That's probably true.
Ineptitude.
Post-college, down to Barney's Broadway. Did you get a choice in that, or were you just placed there? And tell us a little bit about that transition.
By that stage, I think we did have choice. Sometimes there have been times when the Archbishop simply says, you go there, you'll go there, but I think there was choice in our time. By the way, what you haven't mentioned, one of the key points about college that I ought to mention is the food. And the food these days is so good. It's restaurant. The food back then was Second World War type food, if I may say so.
Character building.
Character building.
So was ours.
And I just mentioned that because food is important.
Absolutely.
Graham Cole, who's a dear friend of mine who came through college and as a faculty member, said to me that the strength of college was threefold. It was a third of the time spent in the classroom, a third of the time spent in the library, and a third of the time over coffee. And that's probably right. Probably undervalues the coffee, but really it's very important.
Yes.
And the sport we played together and the things we did together, hugely important.
Yes. I've looked at a few societies. This is the late 60s.
Yeah.
There was a college table tennis and 500. There was all kinds of things that were going on, being reported who'd won which competition. And did they do any study at all back in those days? Not much.
Built community.
Built community, exactly.
Yes,
Very good.
We won't answer that.
So tell us about the transition from college with a close group of friends, the mentors, as faculty.
From the water fights that also occurred.
To
Christine
Broadway.
and I got married in the end of 1968 in my third year.
Yes, and we moved then. There wasn't enough college accommodation.
Right.
Yeah.
So we moved into what were the servants' quarters in the rectory at St Barnabas Broadway, right next to Paul and Anita Barnett.
Yep.
So we had doors that led into their
house.
house.
Yeah. So you could get them tea in the morning and he could do the garden and you could do the cleaning.
Well,
We do have some funny stories, but no.
we shared the phone line.
Yes, we shared
So
the phone line.
if the phone rang and the Barnetts were home, I never answered. Paul or Anita would come to their kitchen door and yell out, "Jensen's telephone."
And did you go to Barney's? Was Paul a teacher here at Moore College at that time?
Paul, I should have mentioned Paul, but he was part-time. He was an extraordinary teacher of church history. We must have got to know each other. I didn't go to Barney's. I was at Dundas and then at Mascot in my student ministry days. Christine, I think you were at Green Valley.
I was.
Yes. But Paul must have got to know me or something like this and invited me there to be his assistant minister. So
live in the servants' quarters.
And live in the servants' quarters, which we had the most wonderful time.
When you first went, you were in fourth year at college and you ran Barney's Club on Wednesday nights.
Yes.
That's all you did. That paid our rent.
Yes.
And
So
then-
I was catechist well, helper there.
Yeah.
And in those days, Ultimo was, shall I say, a slum. And Mr. Gook, who was the previous rector, had set up a thing called Barney's Club for kids in the neighbourhood. Very successful, and I ran it on Wednesday nights.
And then when you were the assistant minister or curate, was there much university ministry going on at Barney's as well that you were involved with in those? This is early 70s, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is another story, and we won't go on to it too long.
Okay.
But Barney's in the 50s was a university church under Howard Guinness, the famous Howard Guinness. In the 60s, the focus had turned more to the suburb in which we were, Mr. Cook. But when Paul Barnett became the rector, he turned it back to the university. And by the time I got there, it was packed with university students listening to the new style of preaching, the expository style of preaching, which Paul Barnett was a master at.
Yep.
And it was an extraordinary ministry amongst university students.
Wonderful. So from Barney's, how did you end up coming back onto faculty?
Well, this is one of Dr. Knox's things. He believed, he instructed all of us, the most important thing about a theological college is the faculty, not the buildings, the faculty. Secondly, the library. And thirdly, the campus. Those three things, but in that order. And so when I went to college, I think one or two maybe had been to Moore College.
Yeah.
Dr. Knox and Mr. Robinson were not Moore College people. Dr. Knox believed that it was necessary for us to provide our own faculty, not just for this college, but elsewhere. And so he recruited people that he thought might have some ability in this area. And so he kindly, perhaps foolishly, recruited me to come back 1973, I think it was. He was attending Barney's, so he heard me preaching and this sort of thing and saw me in action. And he recruited us, probably because of Christine, back to lecture at the college. 3 years. And then sometimes he would say to someone, well, thank you very much indeed. Now go to a parish. In our case, as with others, David Peterson was another typical case. David and Leslie, he would say, right, you're off to England, usually it was England, to study. And so we were sent off with very little financial help at all. We were sent off to Oxford for 3.5 years.
Wonderful. And when you first came back onto faculty, the majority of the faculty would have been the people that had just taught you only 3 or 4 years earlier?
Yes, there were some other additions, wonderful additions, Robert Withingham, for example, and others as well. But majority were the ones that...
I was going to ask, was that intimidating or exciting or...
Well, David Peterson had joined just the year before me, I think. And my memory is, and David may quarrel with this, but my memory is of us sitting there saying nothing during faculty meetings or saying very little. Yes, it was a bit intimidating, but the fellowship of the faculty was so good that we were just welcomed and encouraged.
Do you remember what subjects you taught early on?
Anything other people didn't want to teach.
They did see, Dr. Knox and Mr. Dumbrell, I think, did see that I wasn't very good at Greek, and so they got me to teach second-year Greek. But what they didn't realise was that I was a born teacher, and the way in which I taught it meant that I didn't learn any more Greek. But yes, I did church history, and I did some Old Testament and biblical theology and a range of subjects. But my interest and my skill was always in doctrine and history.
Yeah.
And I was doing a history master's degree at the same time.
And then off to Oxford, and children are now coming onto the scene?
Well, we had...
Do we have to talk about these children?
When we were at Barney's, we had our first two, Michael and Beth. And in fact, the Barnetts gave us a room from the house and made a door into our flat so that we could have a separate bedroom for the children. And Beth, we had Michael and Beth. So when we came back to the college, we had two children.
And then in those 3 years, is that when Stephen came along? Or?
No, we didn't have Stephen until we went to Oxford.
Okay. Yeah. So you've grown up in Sydney, you've gone to church in Sydney your whole lives. How did Oxford, what did you learn there, both as a couple and a family? You said there wasn't a huge amount of financial support, busy studying for your DPhil in a new church environment. Do you have any recollections of how that expanded your life, thinking, mind?
It shaped us. Every experience, doesn't it, Ed, shapes you and gives you depth to your life. And when we went to Oxford, Peter had been able to arrange a part-time assistance role at a church in North Oxford, St Andrews, North Oxford. So we lived in
an evangelical church.
Evangelical church. Yeah. So he ran the Friday night youth group.
If you can believe it.
And then we took a Bible study at one of the colleges at Wolston. And then on Sundays we were involved in the church.
Wonderful.
And they incorporated us. I mean, that was wonderful. The first week we arrived, the church warden came, he and his wife, similar age, children the same as Michael and Beth, and invited us to Sunday lunch.
Wonderful.
We had an English Sunday lunch, one chicken and chipolatas between, I think there were 8 of us there, and different from Australia.
Yeah.
Lots of vegetables and pudding.
Yes, no, wonderful. And isn't it lovely that even on the other side of the world, the Christian fellowship and people that you've never actually met in person.
Never met in person, Ed.
You can share love and relationships.
They are amongst our closest friends.
Wonderful.
So Peter Zooms the church warden still. He's not church warden anymore.
No, we
every
talk
month.
Wow.
every month. And they've been out here and et cetera, et cetera. We made a friend. Friends.
Wonderful.
Many friends.
Well, we made many friends there,
yeah.
and people were very accepting, which is sometimes not the case, but it was a wonderful church to belong to.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And in terms of your study, did the college, who said, often do this DPhil, did they say, do it in this particular subject, or was that just your choice?
Yes and no. I'd done my master's degree at Sydney University under one of the great historians, Patrick Collinson, whose name you'd be familiar with, great historian of the Reformation and of Puritanism. And I did it on Calvinism and witchcraft for a particular reason, and it was quite a useful study for me. When I was going over, I was thinking of doing more in the area of spirits and exorcisms and so forth. But the message from on high, which was from Archbishop Loane and Dr. Knox, was, no, do something more central to the Reformation. And so I actually studied faith, the subject of faith in the reign of Elizabeth I, and I did a great deal of study of the catechisms that were written. 70 or 80 catechisms were written in those days by ordinary pastors, and I studied them. Wonderful. I studied the Roman Catholic response to the Reformation, and I did a little bit of study on things like exorcism as well. And it was a very useful exercise for me. I was well tutored and I managed to get through.
Well done. Can I ask, the interest in spiritualism, was that to do with the context of the 70s and the rising charismatic movement, or was it just you
no,
kind of dabbled in that?
This had been suggested to Patrick Collinson by a very fine New Zealand historian called Ian Bruard, who had been to Indonesia and become aware of how important the spirit world was to the vast majority of people. And he said, we need people to think about this theologically, and hence Calvinism and witchcraft. So the study, also, I might add, it had become something of a subject in academic history anyhow. A man called Keith Thomas had written a magnificent book called Religion and the Decline of Magic. And so it was a very worthwhile subject for study.
Yeah, wonderful. Time in Oxford, special time. Back to Newtown and Moore College. When I was on faculty, we described the faculty as being pastors, teachers and scholars. Was there one of those three that you felt was easier than others, or was that the case in those days as well? So this is in the early 80s, I think. Is that right?
Yes, thank you. Yes. Interestingly, the faculty up to the end of the 70s had published very few books. They were very able people, and D.B. Knox's DPhil had been published, for example, but there was a limited number of books that had been published by the faculty. They were, first of all, pastor-teachers, I think, all of them. And that's how I see myself I see myself as a pastor teacher
Yep.
rather than an academic
Yep.
as such. I think I know about academics. I think I can watch them. I don't think of myself as an academic particularly, but I do think of myself as a teacher.
Yes.
So therefore, my goal in those 4 years was to develop teaching skills. Particularly by that stage, I think I was teaching doctrine, which is my big subject that I love, history and doctrine, the two things I really love. And I think by that stage, I was teaching doctrine particularly.
Yeah.
Alongside Dr. Knox.
Wonderful. And Christine, coming back to Newtown for you, you've got a young family, 5 kids. That's a crazy
Well, we
number.
had the twins in the first year we came back.
Right.
We had them. So you know what it's like with twins.
Yep.
Busy life.
Busy life. And was there things that you could involve yourself? Did you get to know student wives or faculty wives?
Yes. I mean, at that point in time, we used to have a weekly Bible study. It was called Women's Fellowship, I think.
Yeah.
And we had Bible study. And so I always went along to that.
A lot more married students by then, weren't there?
A lot more married students.
That had become the thing.
Yes. And the playground at the back.
Yeah.
You know, I'd wander up. I didn't need to go to the playground, but I'd wander up and sit there with my children, and you get to talk to people there and form relationships. So I was involved in that way. And then I had Michael and Beth at school. So you had another group of parents who you met at that level who were student wives. Yep. And we got involved in the school and started the P&C.
Who started that?
I was the president, wasn't I?
Yeah, you were the founding president.
Of the P&C at North Newtown School.
Very good. And still going.
But
you're not on the group chat, are you? Because it buzzes a lot at this time of year.
Well, we had until last year grandchildren there, yes.
And during that time, particularly, I suppose, later when Peter became principal, the women's ministry at college changed.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that transition. So you're on the faculty, and Broughton Knox has been around for a very long time.
26 years.
Yep. Yeah. So he retires. And the principalship, was that something that you felt called to? Had people said, Peter, would you go for this role? What was that period of life like? Because you're reasonably young as well. Is that right? You're in your 40s?
42.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I didn't think I was young, but comparatively, yes.
When you began in the role, did you think, obviously, Broughton had been a huge influence on you. You thought, I need to keep this going. Or did you think the college needs to change direction? Or did you have a grand vision for what it could be? I mean, it wasn't long until you started building new buildings and the place was growing and things like that. Do you remember that time and what you thought about being the new principal?
Well, my summary of it is I kept Broughton's vision alive for the next 16 years. However, we didn't agree on all things. And I did make certain changes, which I thought were important to make. So I wasn't just doing his will or something like this. And I may add that given the influence he had and the power of his time at college, and given that after a year away he came back and was hanging out around the college, he was remarkable in not in any way trying to influence what was going on at college. Yeah. He handed it over. And, of course, a few years later, we went off and founded another college in South Africa. Yeah. And what a remarkable man he was. Absolutely remarkable. But I think Broughton's vision was right. I still think that. I carried it on, but I did it in my way, and therefore the college changed. Because I'm me.
Absolutely.
Broughton.
Yep. So the transition to being principal and principal's wife, I guess, involved you taking a lead in the women at college and the student wives, as well as, I presume, some of the women at Deaconess House. Just how did that work out for you?
Deaconess House was quite separate, really. So there wasn't a lot of communication between the women there, apart from them coming to college. Yeah. I think their meal times were changing, but basically separate. But what happened in the 80s, it was gradually happening. The student wives wanted some encouragement in being what it is to be a ministry wife.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do I do? So we developed at that time, I was on the committee that was doing this, and as principal's wife as well, it was decided that we would have a weekly meeting. Each term it would always have a Bible study night, but we would do things that would be helpful in ministry life. And we'd look at current issues like the ethical issues of the day and things like that. Yeah. But then we wanted to make Bible study as well available for everyone. There were some small groups, but one of the student wives, Jane Vaughan, and I got together. We both had this vision. I thought it would be good for the faculty wives to be involved in Bible study with the student wives. And to think the student wives, they'd often come from their home churches. They were kind of hanging loose, so to speak, and they needed encouragement in their Christian lives. So we worked out how to get Bible study groups going. So we had Women's Fellowship, it was called then, on Wednesday night, and then Bible study groups at other times for everybody who wanted to. Yep. And that worked out quite well. And over time, they thought the name Women's Fellowship was very daggy and old-fashioned. So we had a competition to change it. And in the end, no one was agreed. And I said, well, what about more women? So more women it is to this day.
Exactly. Very good.
And then at the same time, I thought, what about those student wives who don't come to anything because they're working or their lives are too pressured and they can't? We ought to produce a magazine or something. So on an A3 piece of paper folded in half, we developed Magnolia, and we called it Magnolia because every college house was painted in magnolia.
Absolutely.
And so magnolia is a memory, and the magnolia today is magnificent compared to our early editions. But I remember Sue Saggers, was one of the editors, and we put it together, and I used to come over and photocopy it myself.
Well done. Well, it's become an institution.
I know.
Someone once said to me, we didn't really appoint you, we were appointing Christine.
Very good.
Because of the work that she did. Because actually, we've always been in ministry together. Yeah. When I say together, it doesn't mean that we do it necessarily together. You can see that she goes off and does her thing. But it's one of God's great blessings.
Wonderful. And very significant because the cohort that we were talking about as year groups of students, there's a cohort of ministry wives as well. And so I know that my wife still meets for dinner with other ministry wives from my year group. They're better at meeting than probably we are. But anyway.
Christine, didn't also you and perhaps Mary, I think, start the prayer meeting?
Well, the Women's Auxiliary had been going for a very long time, and it was the main fundraising arm of the college, would you believe, and providing things for students. So when more students were living in houses in Little Queen Street, the Women's Auxiliary provided screen doors on all those houses as safety. And then we replaced all their mattresses in the single quarters for the students. So we did that. And as well, we had film strips, and then we had slides promoting the college, and people from the Women's Auxiliary would go to parishes. We'd invite ourselves. Wonderful. And we'd go around and we'd set up our machine and hope the globe wouldn't go, and address groups of women about the needs of the college. But then as the college became more able to market themselves, we had to refocus. We were praying for the students, but we really then focused on the prayer support group, which it is today.
Yeah, wonderful. The story of the Women's Auxiliary is one that ought to be, I think my great-grandmother got involved in that when my grandfather began studying here. Yes. And I think that in terms of fundraising, They did for a very, very long time. They were the powerhouse.
Yes,
so
they were, because there was
story.
you didn't have people on the staff to do that.
It was the faculty and a secretary or something like that. Yeah. There was a building built in the early 1990s. Do you remember? That would have taken a little bit of time as principal. Do you remember the rationale behind doing that? And were there any particular features that you wanted to see in?
Yes, there were. Thank you very much for mentioning it. It cost, believe it or not, $2 million in 1992 or thereabouts, so you can imagine. But it's called the Knox Centre today. We needed to have good lecture rooms. We had very old lecture rooms, and we needed to have good lecture rooms. And so the building was set up to provide lecture rooms, particularly when we were able to secure the hotel next door to us and so forth, and gave us the opportunity. But I think what you're referring to in particular, the feature of the building, which I think of constantly, and I'd like this to be placed on record, Ed, is that in the square, the grass square outside it where the vine is and so forth and so on, I insisted that there be a path across that which goes nowhere, because I wanted us to have a cricket pitch.
Very important.
This was resisted, particularly by the man responsible for the gardening and this sort of thing. We had someone in from the outside, and he resisted this. He said, "You can't do that. It'll wreck all the flowers," and this sort of thing. I said, "We are going to do it." And I just like future students, if they know nothing else, to be at least grateful that I produced
the Peter Jensen cricket pitch.
The Peter Jensen cricket pitch. I think that's right.
The name of it.
Thank you.
For generations to come.
Thank you. Yes.
No, that's a very important feature. Community building.
Well, that was the idea.
Yeah. No, very good.
And he had the debating, the college debating cup.
Oh, was this at the end of the year, or did it go through the year? No.
During the year, I think, but it was the Jensen Cup, wasn't it?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Which is long past now.
Yes. But things in order to increase fellowship, because men benefit from doing things together.
Yeah, and roughly what size do you remember in the 1990s was the college?
I don't remember, but there was growth. And I think by the time I was getting towards the end of my time, I think probably 140, 150. Yeah. But the growth after that has been dramatic, and that's another story.
Yeah. And in terms of Chapo House, you had a few university boarders.
We did in those days, yes.
Sometimes they might throw water bombs from the roof and get in trouble with the principal.
Yes.
Tough times.
And I think you may have been one of them.
Maybe I was. But water fights were a part of community building as well.
Absolutely, of course. Yes.
So early 2000s, another transition, going to be Archbishop. Now, I've heard you say, I think, that the role of principal of Moore College is an extremely important role in terms of the diocese, and even much further afield than the diocese. First of all, is that true, and why do you think that's the case?
Yes, I think it is the case. I think the role of principal is the most important role from one point of view. The role of the pastor minister in a parish is immensely important role, for example. Let's never denigrate that. But it is hugely important. Interestingly, one of the things that the Archbishop does, which no one else does, so to speak, is ordains people. And he is responsible for making sure that the people are selected, trained, placed, checked out, and so forth and so on. But that task is, of course, he can't do it all himself, and is delegated, has been for the last 170 years, to the college. And the principal of the college really sets the ethos of the college. I've said a couple of times that I'm not an academic. I have written a few books, but I wouldn't regard them as being priceless. But my business really was the selection of faculty. That was the single most important thing, because the faculty makes the college. And you need to have on faculty people who are first and foremost pastor teachers who love the gospel. And the unity of the faculty is very important too, very important. Now, the Archbishop, of course, has an important role and has an important say in who's going to be the principal of the college.
Yep.
Doesn't have the last word, but doesn't have the only word, but certainly has an important part to play in that.
Yep.
Why is it so important? Because your pastor of your church, your minister of your church, is trained here. And therefore, what happens here is crucial to the health of the churches.
Absolutely. And so you stopped being principal, though, and became Archbishop.
Yes, that was the wisdom of the synod, because they thought, how could we stop him? He's been here 16 years. We'll elect him Archbishop. So I was elected Archbishop in 2001, and I remained principal for several months afterwards.
So Archbishop's just a little tack on that their principal can do on the side?
Well, yes, we managed. We
Very
managed.
good.
Well, Peter O'Brien was a wonderful vice principal.
But of course, your involvement in the college didn't cease when you became Archbishop. You were still involved as chair of the college council?
Yes, the Archbishop in my day, and presumably still, is potentially the chair of something like 80 different organisations, believe it or not. I chose to be an active chair in several of them. Anglicare was extremely important, in my opinion. Mr. Martin Robinson helped me see that, Donald Robinson's son. But Moore College is, to my mind, the most important. And so therefore I was an active chair and also in those days a trustee, but I think that's now changed. But I was an active chair of the council of the college.
And you still taught?
Yes, I did for a while, at least, for as long as I was asked to. I had tried to get archbishops to come and teach here anyway because I wanted the students to meet their archbishop. And I might add too, one of Broughton's pieces of advice to me, in my day, the principal would go and meet with the archbishop once a month. They'd talk about how things were going and so forth and so on. And Broughton said to me, don't appoint anyone to the college faculty until you've talked to the archbishop about it. And that was good advice. And 2 or 3 times I was saved from making wrong appointments by the wisdom of archbishops.
Yeah, I guess a broader horizon than...
Oh, yes.
Which, Christine, that transition, there's something very special about this community. It's, in one sense, it's small, it's very close.
Yes.
How was the experience for you suddenly? I mean, you're at probably a different church every weekend. You don't have the same people that you're seeing week in, week out like at Moore College.
No, I think I missed that. You live in community, and as you say, I was living at home in Bishop's Court. I suppose we kept going to the same church. So we've been at St Matthias since 1985, and it's just up the road from Bishop's Court. So that was our home church, and I still went to Bible study there every week. So I had a community, a fellowship of friends that I could trust there. And then, of course, we went around. But, you know, the blessing was that because of college, we knew every minister and his wife in the diocese.
Yeah, wonderful.
That's amazing, you know. And so going to church on Sunday was meeting someone we knew. Yeah. And that was a gift for me.
Yeah.
Usually, but not always. There were some ministers who didn't go to Moore College.
Yes, but on the whole, there was that. And that was important to me. And as well, I had opportunities to go round because people knew me. They would ask me to speak at different things. And so I got to see how women worked in the diocese and meet parishioners, meet fellow Christians in our churches. That was good too.
Yeah, I wonder, a lot of your work with the women at Moore College, once you became Archbishop's wife, it would have been for ministry wives in the parishes rather than in preparation. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So I was involved, and this had been going on before Peter was Archbishop, in the years that people spend when they first leave college, the post-college training.
Potty training,
yes. So I was involved in that, so I was keeping up with people, keeping my contacts. And at the same time, Narelle at Deaconess House asked me, would I be a chaplain to the wives of students who were studying at college, because the women weren't involved in Moore College chaplaincy groups. So I had groups of women I met with for a year, and I really liked that. Yeah. And I still know that those women have a place in my heart still. And the other thing we did was we had a committee in the diocese. There's a wives committee that planned a conference, but we also tried to provide network groups for people to meet in where they could share their experience of life, things like that. They're still going,
Wonderful.
so that's encouraging.
Yeah, excellent. If you think back being principal of Moore College and being Archbishop, and both perspectives, were they as difficult as each other? Was it an absolute gear change in terms of stress and challenges?
Well, at that time, the Archbishop of Sydney was a figure taken notice of in the press and things like that. And there was a religion reporter on the Herald, which they don't have anymore. But this person used to write about things. And what's the essence of good writing is conflict. So they were keen to promote conflict with Peter. So they would always roll out someone to say what they disagreed with. So seeing Peter criticised in public wasn't my favourite thing.
Of course not.
There was nothing you could do about it. You couldn't defend yourself. You just had to live with it.
Yep.
And at times that was hard. I think Peter had some quite difficult things in the diocese as well, like the global financial crisis. That was very stressful. Don't you think?
Absolutely, yes. Yes, there were. Now that you mention them, yes. And there were very difficult issues and things to deal with.
And they were public.
You've put your finger on it, Christine.
I found...
the public nature of it.
Yes. And what you could do is just stamp around the house and get rid of your anger that way, because you couldn't change anything.
Yeah.
No.
And they get things wrong.
Yeah.
So in one article, in one magazine, I was called Catherine. Well, you'd think they get their facts straight, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So I'm glad you mentioned this. I'd forgotten. But that is the big difference, isn't it? Nobody in the outside world knows who the principal of Moore College is.
Yes.
But in those days particularly, Archbishop Pell had just started. Archbishop Jensen had just started. And the two of us were in the press fairly regularly, or on the radio. You remember the radio? Yes. There were all sorts of things. Well, I was very blessed to have some excellent helpers. Margaret Rogers in the first place, and then Russell Powell as media officers. I was really blessed to have their help and their advice at all times, and so forth and so on. In fact, once again, I was surrounded by a group of people who were working for the diocese. As at the college, I was surrounded by a group of people here, but there I was surrounded by a group of people who I trusted and who had very great skills.
Yeah. I imagine a very stressful role as Archbishop, but what are the joys in that role?
Oh, running meetings.
Okay,
I love running meetings. Even synod.
Being in the chair.
As long as I'm in the chair, yes. Synod is boring unless you're running it, and I really like that. And the standing committee and everything else. I like chairing meetings, Ed.
Archbishop William Temple was once asked how he copes with so many meetings, and he said, profound bouts of inattention.
Well, that's very good. I like that. In fact, I wrote a poem once while sitting in a meeting of the General Synod Standing Committee about how boring it was to be sitting there.
But seriously, were there any joys?
Oh, joys. Yes, apart from chairing meetings. As you may have guessed from talking to us, we are people. And the joy of being in the position was always people. Guests from overseas who had come and stay with us, for example. Wonderful. We had John Stott stay with us for a little while. And I have to say, that was slightly scary. But he made us feel at home in our own home, I always say. So first of all, we are people. I think the thing that drove me was the knowledge that in Sydney, we church-going Christians represent a small percentage of the population. And the way in which the college has been going for the last 70 years, at that point, 90 years now, had produced a group of people, men and women, who knew the gospel and wanted to preach the gospel. So trying to marshal them together and say, we have a big issue in front of us, we need to preach the gospel effectively and well, that was the thing that drove me all the time. So hence the so-called diocesan mission.
Yeah.
And was it effective? Oh, well, there were people converted. People came to know the Lord.
We read of a man
Yes.
just recently who's been visiting in his area, handing out essential Jesus.
Wonderful. Yep. So it goes on.
Since 2009,
Yeah.
because of the diocesan mission. And so, yes, it had its impact. And I would say that many people became Christians as a result. But the job is still ahead of us.
Sure, absolutely. I feel like, in one sense, the years at Moore College and the relationships with the clergy and so on.
Yes.
I mean, if you were dropped into a diocese that you didn't know people, to galvanise people for a mission,
very hard.
It coalesced really the two kind of major areas of your ministry life together, just worked together.
It was amazing. I kind of think you couldn't have arranged it. The Lord used us in different ways, and we've grown through the ups and downs, the challenges of both, with family life as well, managing that, which wasn't always easy, and then working with people. So the other bishops in the diocese were to have fellowship with them and their wives was very special, a very special time.
Yeah.
And we used to meet them regularly, and at the time, the wives used to meet separately. We had our own Bible study.
Lovely.
So it's those things that God gives you opportunities to serve him. And I mean, we pray each day that God will give us the good works to do. Yeah. And so you do them by his grace, don't you?
Donald Cameron preached at our wedding, and he preached on a text which you wouldn't think was good at a wedding necessarily, but it's been awfully good for marriage. What was the text again, Christine?
It was Romans 8:28. All things work together for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. And you know, we never know what we might need to make us more like Jesus. We wouldn't choose half of them.
Yes.
We wouldn't choose them at all. You can look back and see that God has taught you about himself so much in those times.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And Ed, one of the things too is, just as at Moore College, the building has been built by others. So becoming Archbishop, I succeeded Harry Goodhue, Donald Robinson, Marcus Loane. These are great men. And they left their different legacies, which I was able to use. One of the things that Harry Goodhue did was to set up a process of looking out for abuse cases, sexual abuse cases, called the Professional Standards Unit. Now, it's grown since then, and I helped it as well. But one of the difficulties about being Archbishop was to come across the knowledge that some of the people that I had known from Moore College also failed us, failed the Lord badly. I ought to have been aware of this because we're all sinners.
Yeah.
But then I would hear personally stories, not just about clergy, but about all sorts of people within a church situation where things had gone badly wrong. That was hard. That was hard. But again, the Lord had prepared me for it and prepared us for it through the ministry of others. And again, I was surrounded by people who were very helpful indeed.
Yeah. A very heavy burden as the leader of the institution, where it's not something you've personally done, but there's a, I feel like, a potentially corporate responsibility.
Indeed.
Yeah.
The other side of that was that in speaking to victims, I met some of the most heroic and extraordinary people that I have ever met. And always remember, we must always remember that we're all sinners and we all have our failings. Yeah.
We've talked a lot about the role and what it meant for Sydney, but of course there were aspects that the Archbishop of Sydney has an even broader canvas. Let's talk about GAFCON, and we don't have to talk about necessarily the origin story of GAFCON, but I'd be interested in the context of this video of your time at Moore College, even your experience over in England, and I guess you've trained missionaries the global service, you've had a global mindset yourselves, and then GAFCON comes, well, it doesn't just pop out, a lot of work goes into establishing it. But your role in doing that, but also Moore College has a place in something bigger than Sydney too. I'd be interested in your thoughts on where Moore College sits in that kind of global movement.
Mm. Yes, it does, Ed. It's a very significant one indeed, and you're right. It was interesting, after the 1998 conference, the big conference for bishops, which is held every 10 years, the Lambeth Conference in London. I can remember the standing committee meeting after that when the bishops came home and told us about what had happened, and the really significant part our Archbishop and bishops had in making sure that the Lambeth Conference passed the very important motion that it did. Sydney had a part to play in that, and thus Moore College, because that's where we were trained. It was very important. Now, the college I entered in 1966, I would say, didn't have that global reach. I may be wrong, but I don't think it did.
Well, it still had missionaries who were trained at college, ministers who went overseas. So didn't you, Peter Tasker and other people, Tony Nichols, people who were trained here who went as missionaries with CMS?
Yes, of course, Christine, you're absolutely right. And that is the foundation for what followed. One of those missionaries, or two, a husband and wife, the Scarrets in Chile, had a great deal to do with making sure that the PTC course, which I haven't mentioned, translated into Spanish and used in Chile. Now that has turned into something bigger and broader and so forth and so on. Now, my role as Archbishop, and then particularly my role as GAFCON, has opened up the Anglican Communion for me, and I have seen the impact of our missionaries and the impact of, in particular, Moore College through the correspondence course, which is immense. So that's very important. As well as with the global, GAFCON has something called the Global Theological Education Network, and that is the person who is the person in that is Bill Salia, one of our very own, and works indeed right here at college, in fellowship with the college.
But you're the director, aren't you?
Well, I'm the director, but Bill does the actual work and the actual thinking. And Bill travels constantly, meets people everywhere and so forth and so on. And the vision that drives Moore College is in many ways the vision that he is sharing with others about the need for the Word of God, the need for community and things like that. And so even in my lifetime, we have seen the impact of the diocese, and not least Moore College, grow and grow in so many places. Another one, of course, is George Whitefield College, founded by Dr. Knox, and in which, again, the college, George Whitefield, is its own college. There's no doubt about that. But the relationship between GWC and Moore College continues, as too does the college in Egypt, the Alexandria School of Theology, where we've had a connection since its very beginning. And it's interesting that our former vice principal, Simon, and his dear wife are now going off to the UCU in Uganda, which again is a key institution in the African scene. So I would say, to my surprise, in a way, and through the power of God, I ought also to mention the books that come out constantly from the college faculty, I also ought to mention, but the impact of the college on a far wider front has occurred in my lifetime.
It is incredible.
Praise the Lord.
Absolutely. I remember you saying once, Peter, that I can't remember what the situation was, but when you were feeling maybe proud about being principal of Moore College, Christine would say, it's a tiny college at the end of the Antipodes.
Hey, he's a third-rate lecturer in a second-rate college in the Antipodes.
Which I think is, in one sense, Moore College was, the buildings were crumbling and they're not anymore. But when you see the global impact, it's amazing that God uses frail vessels, jars of clay,
Yes.
and has the whole world in his hands. And so what we do here in Sydney can make a difference to some person in Africa or South America?
Well, I attended a conference. In fact, I set up a conference in Uganda about 8 years ago now of people from different countries to discuss theological education. And I'll never forget a leader from the Congo coming across to me with a great African smile on his face, which I love, and saying, doing the PTC course, and particularly the biblical theology stuff in it, has changed his life. And then another gentleman from Asia comes across, smiling in an Asian way, that says, by the way, the PTC course has meant everything to me. And here are these two gentlemen, leaders in their own areas, who immediately said, Moore College means so much to me. I could hardly have guessed it.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Thank you, Lord, who holds the whole world in his hands. Yeah.
One of the things I haven't mentioned, actually, that I got involved with as Archbishop's wife was Mothers' Union. Mm. I knew about it, but I became patron when Peter became Archbishop. And they were looking for a president a few years after, in 2008, and they asked me, and I thought, I don't know. But then the aim to win the families of the nation for Christ just was like a flash of lightning. And I thought, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. Mm. And I think that's what Mothers' Union has done now. It's been around for 150 years, not 170, but 150 years. It's in 84 countries with over 4 million members, the bulk of them in Africa. Mm. And I think through GAFCON, I've met Mothers' Union members. They're so enthusiastic, so keen for the gospel in their countries. It's just been a great privilege. And in Sydney, really, to try and encourage Christian family life, marriage, Christian marriage, and family life is such a privilege to work with. That's been my focus in that since those times.
And you're still involved. I think there was a meeting last night, wasn't there?
There was, yes.
My committee meeting my wife attended.
She did indeed, yes.
So your involvement's been profound. And, of course, you were awarded an Order of Australia medal for... Tell us about what that was awarded for.
Well, I was nominated for work with Mothers' Union and ministry wives in Sydney Diocese. So they've been my passions, and I was honoured. Everybody who gets award says they're humbled by it, and you are really, because you think of all the other people who do the same sort of things, and nobody nominates them, you know? So it's just a matter of being nominated. People take the effort to do that, and I appreciate them doing that.
Well, the honour was certainly well deserved.
Thank you.
It's been a profound ministry journey that you've both been on, probably when you met in Sunday school. You couldn't have imagined.
75 years ago.
Yeah, wonderful.
My mum and dad weren't believers, and, they thought I'd become a fanatic when I went forward at the crusade. So...
And you have?
Yeah. Well, do you think it's a fanatic?
It really is wonderful. Just before we wind up, your thoughts on the future. You've traversed, the world in the 1940s and 50s is very different to 2026. Moore College was just a few students back in those days, and now it's a big operation, a global reach. What's your reflections on the situation for Moore College and maybe Sydney Diocese, considering your experience in those spheres?
My dear brother, Philip?
Yes, I've met him.
Some people know him. He said to me the other day that he's an optimist, and optimists get things done. And I'm a pessimist. Pessimists are usually right. So thank you, Philip. So I'm going to say something about that. What we've noticed over the years is that when something is going along wonderfully is a dangerous time, because people who don't share your faith look at it and say, we'd like to be part of that. And so I could number any number of organizations and colleges and so forth that have started with evangelical zeal and been very successful, and then taken over by people who don't share the original vision and changed. And so we must continue to be, we have been, and we must continue to be vigilant in guarding the truth. There's no guarantee that Moore College and the Diocese of Sydney will continue on in this way. The Lord doesn't need us. He can do his work. So we need to be vigilant and guard the truth and make sure that the right people are in the right place. That's really the key to it. Mm. And we can never just take it for granted. However, that said, if the Lord is prepared to continue to use us, then in my experience, I think we're only just seeing the beginning of what can and will be achieved, and not least in our own country. I think since the turn of the century, actually, I've seen some pretty wonderful things occur in our own country. We don't always see them. We always think, oh, things are worse, things are going badly. But if you actually think about it, there are some remarkable things that have occurred since the turn of the century. And I see the Lord's hand at work. So I think that if the Lord wills it, and if we are vigilant, then the work of this place and the work of the diocese as a whole can go on and be hugely important for the well-being of Australia and then for many other places as well.
Mm. Pretty good for a pessimist. What about you, Christine? Are you optimistic or pessimistic?
Oh, come on. I'm not going to say.
Say.
Christine is a realist.
That's a pessimist.
No, you're a realist. She actually does get things done. She has ideas and gets things done, but she's real as well.
It's not easy, but it's good to remember that God uses ordinary people to do his will and to share the gospel. I lived with Mum, Dad and the Canary at Bondi, yet God has used me in different ways and given me opportunities. What a privilege that has been for me, and I feel very grateful to the Lord for that. For my family, I've got 5 children, 26 grandchildren and 1.5 great-grandchildren, and I love every one of them. I pray for each one of them. He's giving me those precious people to be part of my life. So I have much to give thanks for. And I pray for them that they'll carry the gospel into the future as well. Yeah. That's what I want. I want them to love Jesus. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely.
If I can leave my grandchildren loving Jesus and my children, you know, I've seen God work in my children's lives in ways I never imagined.
Yeah, wonderful. So well, that thankfulness to God, I know that I speak for many, many people when I reflect on your ministry as a couple, the amazing things that you have done or he has done through you, to use your words. But as beneficiaries of that, we are incredibly thankful to God, and I really appreciate the time chatting this morning. It's been fantastic.
Thank you.
So we've enjoyed it because we're here with you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you for listening to More in the Word, a podcast of Moore Theological College. Our vision as a college is to see God glorified by men and women living for and proclaiming Jesus Christ, growing healthy churches, and reaching the lost. In 2026, Moore College is giving thanks to God for his faithfulness over 170 years. Please join us in praying for the college, and if you're in Sydney, please consider coming along to one of our events. This interview is just one of many from the college's 100 Ministry Stories project. For more than 160 years, Moore Theological College has been sending men and women into a wide range of ministries in Sydney, every state of Australia, and almost every continent in the world. The 100 Ministry Stories project helps us to remember and praise God for the work that he has been doing in the world in our times. Remembering what God has done in our lives helps us respond to our world in steadfast hope. It is our prayer that as you hear how the Lord is at work, you will be encouraged in your faith and built up in joyful assurance. Find out more on our website. That's moore.edu.au/100, spelt out in numerals. If you are a graduate and keen to contribute to the 100 Ministry Stories project, we would love to hear from you. Get in contact with the communications team to express your interest or to find out more. You can find out more and register by going to the Moore College website, more, that's moore.edu.au. If you have not already done so, we encourage you to subscribe to our podcast through your favorite podcast platform so that you'll never miss an episode. For past episodes, further resources, and to make a tax-deductible donation to support the work of the college and its mission, please visit our website at more, that's moore.edu.au. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with a friend and leave a review on your platform of choice. We always benefit from feedback from our listeners, so if you'd like to get in touch, you can email us at comms, that's C-O-M-M-S, at more.edu.au. The More in the Word podcast was edited and produced by me, Karen Beilhartz, and the communications team at Moore Theological College. The music for our podcast was provided by Mark July from Pixabay. Until next time.